Hey folks, so I am at this conference still doing writing and learning and meeting people and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Um, Conferences for tech are much more like talks, and you'll have one track or maybe many tracks with talks, or sessions are going to be about talks. Here at the writing conference is very, very panel heavy, and you ask questions and stuff. Anyway, that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm addressing a question on my AMA. I forgot to look what number it was, but it is about somebody was wondering. I've got two tests that have some code that looks basically the same, where specifically they're testing Redux, and so they have some code that is like the state object that they need to initialize, and they're wondering if maybe they could take that state object and put it into a function, call that function to get that state. So the two tests don't look exactly the same, and so it's more dry and all that. So what I say on a regular basis is that it's really important for me as a maintainer to be able to look at two tests that are different and be able to tell what the differences are. And so I see this a lot in like when you're testing Express middleware or something, where you have to pass a request and response object, and those are going to have different methods and data on them. And so those mock objects are very large, and so each one of your tests is going to look very similar. Maybe the header is going to be different. So like you have this giant object, or you have two copies of this giant object, and all that's different is the header, but I have to read the entire object in both of those tests to really get that difference. And so it makes it harder for me as a maintainer of the test to know, okay, so I see that the result is different, but what is it about the inputs that are different that makes that result unique? Or even if you have like many assertions, lots of times those assertions can look different or look the same but are actually different. And so by creating little utilities, you can call that difference out a little bit better. And so that's what I would actually really encourage. Now, you get to a point where you start doing logic in your tests, and that is not a good idea. So I strongly recommend against doing that unless you plan on writing a testing utility, which itself is going to be tested. That's kind of where React Testing Library came from. I'm sure that's where Enzyme came from, and these testing utilities, or Sign-On and all of these testing utilities, they started as like little utilities that people are using to make their tests easier, but then they get complex enough that they start to need to be tested themselves, and so you do write those tests. So long or short answer to this question is yes, absolutely. I think it's a good idea to make utilities to make it so that the differences in your tests are more defined and well, like easier to tell, to notice the differences. But be careful of putting a lot of logic in there, because at some point you got to start testing your tests, which is basically amounts to making a utility library that you write tests for, which is fine. But yeah, these utilities can make your tests more expressive, and by expressive I mean they allow you to express the differences in the inputs as well as the difference in the outputs that you're making assertions on. So anyway, like I said, that was from my AMA. I'm not sure which question it was, but it's still open right now. You can go check it out right now, or you could just search for the URL for this video, because I'm going to link to it in that question. You'll see what those tests actually look like. I'll probably add the link to this in the description, or somebody comments or whatever. But yeah, let me just check really quick, see if anybody had comments. Well, I know people had comments, but see if any of those comments were questions or anything. Okay, cool. Thanks, people, for being nice. I'm going to jump out and go back to